So we've finished with our repository. Now it's time for us to look at the view model. So we're getting closer to the prize, in this case, to be able to use a composable and get data from a repository, which gets from a DAO, which gets from a SQLite, which gets from an entity table, and so forth. Okay, let's go ahead and open our project. And now we're going to go and create the view model. Now we know this view model is going to be in our favorites, right, screen. And so we are going to go back inside of our favorite package, and you can see the reason why we had set up this way. We have these packages within packages because it makes life much easier. So now we're going to create a new class, and it's just going to be normal class. This is going to be favorite view model as such. Okay, and because we're using hilt, we're going to say at hilt view model. There we go. And of course, remember, just like we did with repository, we're going to take that repository and inject into our view model. Add inject. We want the weather database repository, and don't forget to make sure that this is actually a view model instance as such. All right, let's close all of these and focus on our favorite view model. All right, so we're going to add a few properties to this favorite view model class. The first is going to be, say, private val. And this is going to be underscore, call this fav list. So we say underscore because we want to make sure that this, or signal that this is actually a private variable or field, in that case, that won't be used anywhere else but in this class. Okay, and we're going to make it a type. Now we know that we are expecting to get flow types. Now there is, of course, another extension it's called mutable state flow, because we need to get that state mutable, in this case mutable state. So we're going to say mutable state flow like that, and here we are going to pass, of course, requires the types that this mutable state flow is going to expect, and we know it's going to be a list of favorite objects. All right, there we go. And of course here I'm just going to instantiate an empty list. Say that this is just going to be an empty list in the beginning, but it's not just a normal list, it's going to be a mutable state flow list. If you have over, of course, looks like it doesn't have a lot of information, but it says creates a mutable state flow with the given initial value. The initial value is going to be an empty list. Okay, now we need to later then here create a val. This is going to be the fav list, which is going to be now an interface that any other application or any other class can use, right? That's why you don't have underscore. So we're going to say it's equal to, we're going to get our fav list. Looks like I finished there. Okay, so I'm going to use our fav list mutable state there, and I'm going to say dot as state flow. Okay, if you have over, it's going to say represents this mutable state flow as read-only state flow. So we are getting the state flow that we get from a mutable state flow, right? So we are saying we want to get all that as a state flow. And once we get that data, we're going to put in this fav list property. That way we can use it anywhere else. And this is just for us. I'm going to create an init block here. So for that, I'm going to see if I can use what I have right now, in this case repository, and get everything that we have in our list, or in this case in our database. To do so, I have to put all that in a background. I have to launch a certain block, a coroutine that will deal with all of the background threads and everything that we need to take care of, that needs to be taken care of. So we do that by saying view model scope like that, and invoke the launch block. And what I can do just to say, okay, we're going to get enough highways per se, to run this parallel sequences of operations, I can just say dispatchers like that and say IO. Right, so inside here, I'm going to invoke the repository. Where did that come from? Well, we have injected the repository here, right? And then I can just go and say get favorites. You can see the favorites returns a flow list of favorites objects, which is very convenient. And then I'm going to use this distinct until changed function. If you hover over, what's that going to say? Well, returns flow where all subsequent repetitions of the same value are filtered out. So in this case, no repetitions at all. And then I'm going to say collect block there to collect the information. In this case, it's going to be a list, as you can see, of favorites. So I'm going to put that and say list of faves, just for us to have that handle variable there. And then I'm going to check here if list of faves is null or empty. If that's the case, I'm going to say log d, just say empty faves. Okay, let's put that inside of braces. In any other case, else, then for now, what we're going to do, I'm going to say fave list. This is where we're going to add, right, that value, the list itself. We're going to do take our list of favorites that we're getting as we collect all of our favorites from our database, and we add that, assign that to our fave list, that value, which is this guy there. All right, and while we're there, I'm going to say log d, and I'm just going to print that out. So I'm going to use actually now the fave list, this public interface, if you will, that value to get that list. Say faves like this. Right? So this is just for us initially. Obviously, initially there will be nothing there, but that's okay. And there you have it. And then at the bottom here, this is when I am going to invoke another functions, right? Because remember, this is repository. Rather, this is the view model, which if you look at our representation here, we have DAO, then we have repository, now view model. And the view model, we have an instance of our repository. We injected it, which is really helpful. Okay. So now what we need to do is we need to create this function, insert favorite. To insert a favorite, we need to pass a favorite object, and I'm going to use the view model scope because that's important. As we saw earlier, we inside of a view model, so we get access to this view model scope, right, which is tied to a view model. And then I'm going to use launch again, and in this case I'm just going to call the repository and say insert favorite and pass that favorite like that. I can put that in a new line so we can see everything there. So now when we call favorite view model, we instantiate that, say insert favorite, we pass the favorite, it will know how to launch this code block here, calls the repository, insert favorite, and pass that favorite object. Okay, the fun part begins. And I'm going to just put an update here, even though we're not going to use favorite. I'm going to pass a favorite object and view model scope, launch, call the repository, update favorite, pass the favorite object, and we're done. Okay, I'm going to do one more. You can continue to do other ones as well, of course, but we're just going to do the ones we actually going to use. Remove favorite. In fact, let's call this delete favorite, just to have the same names. Pass the favorite, view model scope dot launch, repository, delete favorite, pass our favorite, and we're done. If you go to our repository, of course, you will see that we have others, but I'm just going to add the ones that we need. I'm not going to use the get favor by ID and so forth. But for completions, if you want, you can also have all of those reflected here. That's totally fine. But I'll just stop here. Okay, I'm just put that in one line since you know exactly what's happening right now. All right, so we are good. That means now we move up the level, we go here, which is going to be our composable. Because now instead of live data, notice, right, we don't need to use live data. We are actually using the mutable state flow, it's just a flow, right? And this, of course, when we call in our composable, the fav list, we'll have the flow of our data coming from the database. It's going to be a list of favorites, and we'll know exactly how to deal with that, or rather, the composable will know how to deal with that because it's the correct type that we need. It will have that state that's needed for a composable to know how to recompose itself and show the data.